The ultimate action experience demands a little dose of exaggeration and a bit of storytelling to turn it into a mix of action-adventure, a sprinkling of reality TV drama, and the action-adventure turns into the ultimate entertainment. The latest promotion to discover the key to this winning formula is the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Let's see how Dana White's MMA promotion managed to knock out its competition by dominating the reality TV scene with its home production. First and foremost, UFC's not just about fighting. You might think of the UFC as a serious sport, a sport for real fighters and learned fans probably. It's supposed to be the opposite of its flashier cousin, the World Wrestling Entertainment, popularly known as the WWE. While that's not a bad assumption to hold, it's important to realize that the UFC too banks firstly and most importantly on entertaining its fan base. No one wants to see one guy beat another to a pulp and take notes on their excellent technique. Even rarer are fans that actually learn and implement the lessons they grasp in combat from watching the UFC. No, most people want to put a name and life story to the guy they're watching on the screen. Whether it's fighting for legacy, respect, tradition, honor, or any one of those tags that UFC decides to put on as their backstory, a fighter is more than his numbers, just as the UFC's more than just another fight promotion. In fact, each sport that you watch has an element of fiction to it. That doesn't make it any less real. It just makes the fighters even more relatable to fans and pushes them to root more wholeheartedly for their favorite player, and bitterly oppose the villain or the heel of the show. On the other hand, the hero of the storyline are people like Khabib Nurmagomedov or Islam Makhachev, whose background is built up to give them street cred. Fan favorites are decided along these lines too, and so is the reality TV show, which leans fully into the entertainment side of UFC. Now for the diversification of the UFC. The UFC's biggest and loudest matchups all have one thing in common. Each match had a hero and an anti-hero. So Dana's right in thinking that's what the audience wants to see more of, the story behind the fight. So far, this balance of entertainment and reality is pulling in big numbers and paying off big time for the head honcho over at the promotion, Dana White. Not only has his promotion become the darling of the big bloody world of MMA promotions, jumping way ahead of the curve, the American promotions become the face of MMA not just in its home country but around the world. This has led it to diversify its media offerings and roll out a reality TV show. Another branch of its diversification attempts is through the merchandise launches that it's brought out. The day might not be far away when we see UFC licensing documentary deals too, or perhaps it'll form its own production company to roll out massive blockbusters based in and around the UFC cage. Oh wait, that's already happened. From 2002's Smashing Machine to 2020's UFC Chronicles, the promotion's not valued at over $7 billion for nothing. Yes, even before it came out with its flagship reality TV show Ultimate Fighter, the promotion captivated audiences with the reality TV genre. This attracted wide audiences from hardcore fight enthusiasts to the casual amateur, to even those who were never interested in jiu-jitsu, sambo, or the difference between the two. Really then, the UFC's turn towards reality TV was the best way to diversify its viewership. Following up, The Ultimate Fighter saved the promotion from disaster. Not every UFC fan has to be a serious sportsman. You can bet though that it's as serious a business as any. Reality TV, which on the face of it seems childish and obviously staged, is actually a serious commitment for many stay-at-home families who watch it together over popcorn and hushed gossip. Even if you set aside the hold of the reality TV genre on the masses, the role of the UFC's own production Ultimate Fighter in saving the promotion from ruin cannot be ignored. Its first season had come at a time of financial downslide for the MMA promotion. The stardom that came to the winners of the first season back in 2005 over their journey to securing six-figure contracts can be judged by the fact that close to 3 million people had tuned in to watch them kick, box, and trash talk their way up to the top prize. In the same way, Season 1-2 proved to be a top prize for the promotion itself, whose fortunes were suddenly turned around and Dana White himself became a household name through that show. Let's look at The Ultimate Fighter's prolific 30 seasons in just 15 years. Kudos to UFC where they're due. They do know how to capitalize on an opportunity. And then they go all in, just like their fighters when they enter that cage. For UFC, this meant cashing in on the success of the 30 seasons old reality TV show that debuted in 2005, and keeping at it each year, refining the formula and raising its profile with audiences. This has resulted in the huge catalog of seasons and episodes that have become part of UFC's history. The rapid growth of the show into its 30-season milestone is just another indicator of the cash cow that the promotion sees in this venture. Perhaps that's putting it too simply, because the frequent release of the reality TV show actually turned the UFC into a lifestyle addiction for many. Most people now follow the UFC as a daily event, a part of their life. This is in major part due to the weekly experience of watching each episode of TUF on ESPN+. Ultimate Fighters and its 30 seasons were key to turning the UFC into this household name that was on regardless of any big-name fight events, and could be watched by families sitting together to even passionate followers of the art of martial combat. Up next is the impact of the reality TV show on the UFC's current format. It would be an understatement to put the Ultimate Fighter's impact as just drawing in viewership. Instead, the reality TV show served as an experimental ground, or a launching pad for a lot of the promotion's own ideas. This was a relatively low-stakes way to check out what would make it to the promotion's main events. Testing the waters in this way with the reality TV show has netted the show a rules and regulations system that heavily draws from innovative changes that were first tried and tested in the reality TV scene itself. Clearly, whatever they were doing in the reality TV scene worked, because the trio of events before TUF's first season finale sold 225,000 pay-per-view tickets between them. It was working, and boy did the UFC need it. At the time, it was heavily bleeding cash, and with very little PPV sales to show for it. Things changed drastically with the arrival of the first season of TUF itself, and there's been no looking back since. While a lot has changed since the first season's launch, including the sale of UFC's parent company for north of $4 billion, the show has continued on its production run, with each season being as highly touted as the one before it. It's remarkable how consistent the UFC has been with TUF's releases, perfecting the formula over and over again without letting it get boring even one bit. Following up, it's actually brought some of the best UFC fighters of all time. At the same time as reality TV was saving the entire UFC from a deep crisis, it was also injecting new lifeblood into the promotion's lineup. These included legendary fighters who would go on to make a big name for themselves in the UFC and the MMA community at large. It was TUF where they got their big break. Counting themselves in that list are amazing fighters like McGregor, Silva, and Georges St. Pierre. The length and breadth of the UFC's roster served as the cast for TUF, which was a bit like a long-format version of those 475 event fights that the UFC has carried out in 21 different countries since the epic finale of TUF's first season. The number of legends who got their kickstart from the reality TV arm of the UFC may not fit in one frame of your screen, but they can fit in a single season of TUF. Over time, a total of 6 Hall of Famers proudly count TUF as having given them their first big break and a shot at real celebrity. This in addition to the 10 champions that the reality TV show has sponsored. In addition, there are invaluable bloopers and behind the scenes that have opened up our view of the champion as a human being like the rest of us, and not a Terminator-like brutal killer. Last but not least, the Fox Sports UFC productions aiming for global reach. The platform of a reality TV show actually makes perfect sense for someone who's got talent alongside an interesting story of his life, but for some reason hasn't been able to get booked by the UFC for a main event billing. Starting from scratch in a pretty similar manner were a lot of international fighters who got their first dose of the UFC cage through participation in this reality show. The reason both the UFC and its homegrown reality TV show have gotten to where they are now is that they feature the best talent from all over the world. While TUF is far from perfect, that's perhaps what the fans want and admire about the show. In reality TV, where each emotion is stripped bare and there's nowhere to hide, even for the tough, untiring, and absolutely dominant breed of fighters that are signed to the UFC. It's absolutely charming to see fighters with nerves of steel break down, let us into their thought process, feel exposed and weak in the face of the tough expectations placed on them, and still come out on top. And there's no other way we'd rather see these emotions play out than in the cheesy yet brutally honest and surprisingly calm world of TUF. That's all for this video. How big of a role would you say reality TV has played in the UFC's continued success? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you liked the video, do press the like button. As always, remember to hit the subscribe button for more such content. We'll see you in the next one.